Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a science fiction adventure film, SEKSMISJA. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in 1991 during a press conference where Max and Albert volunteers for the first human hibernation experiment. The research is done by the professor who successfully hibernated a chimpanzee for 6 months and will continue his research on humans. The press conference is televised. The two will be hibernating for 3 years. The professor admits that the experiment is not without risk, since this is the first time for human hibernation and the human body is still different from that of a chimpanzee. Many years later, Max and Albert wake up and are taken to a weird white room where they are served their meal by women. Max comments that their food's stale, so one of the women approaches him to teach him how to eat the bread by turning it open and consuming the content inside. Max and Albert are unable to enjoy the meal since their sense of taste is gone. Max searches inside his hibernator and pulls out the cigarette, lighter, and alcohol that he had hidden before they were put under. As they're smoking, the women are alerted. 2 women immediately enter and start spraying them with foam to put out their cigarettes. A blonde doctor named Dr. Blonde enters their room to discuss their claim about the professor and his research. She reveals that the professor doesn't exist. Max thinks Dr. Blonde is kidding and points out that the experiment is a success since he and Albert are alive. She tells them that there were more important matters than their experiment during the war, which surprises the 2 men. Another doctor enters when they ask who won the supposed war. She tells them it doesn't matter who won, but only those who survived. It turns out Max and Albert are the only men in existence, since men were wiped out during the war. It was already 2044, 53 years after the experiment. Confused and frightened, they attempt to leave, but are electrocuted. While trying to get their bearings, Albert assumes that what's happening is the second stage of the experiment, and they're being tested regarding their resistance to a psychological shock. Max is still in disbelief that they're in a world without men and questions how they're able to reproduce. Dr. Blonde overhears and tells him not to worry, since it was always the woman who gave birth. Albert quickly understands when Dr. Blonde talks about artificial parthenogenesis. A brunette woman from another faction called Genetics enters Dr. Blonde's workstation to mess with her equipment. She mentions that it was a pity Dr. Blonde left her work at Genetics, but Dr. Blonde confidently explains that she's doing well in Archeo, the other faction. Before leaving, the brunette tells Dr. Blonde that it'd be better if she handed them over to Genetics. The next day, a small TV in their room turns on, and a small girl talks about parthenogenesis. Albert explains to Max that it's children created in test tubes. Dr. Blonde tells them that their method of procreation is perfect, and Max scolds her by telling her that they should be ashamed for brainwashing kids. That night, Max asks Albert if what the women are saying is truly possible, if women can reproduce on their own. Albert confirms this, and states that even back in their time, it was possible. He couldn't imagine it being done on such a wide scale though. He mourns the 53 years they've missed, the friends and family that had come and gone. Max announces that he's never allowing himself to be frozen again. They comfort each other, and Max hands over the last sip of alcohol he had. While watching the television, Max realizes that if they play their cards right, the current situation can be a paradise for them. Albert admonishes him for still thinking with his genitals in their current predicament. Dr. Blonde enters to check on the two, asking them how they're feeling and how they're doing. Max would answer flirtatiously, but Dr. Blonde doesn't understand the context and thinks it only means he's doing well. Putting his hormone moves on her, Max asks if they could take a walk together or even dance. He steals a virgin kiss from Dr. Blonde, which surprises and angers her. Max attempts to seduce her again, but this time she throws his smelly ass down to the floor. Dr. Blonde leaves, but the smelly kiss leaves her confused and curious. The 2 men are made to wait at a biosanctuary, where they come across stuffed mutated animals that were victims of radiation. Albert calls for Max's attention when he finds a tree with 2 tiny apples. They eat both. Her Excellency, the leader of this new world, finally meets the 2 men. Someone asks how old they are, and Emma, a member from Genetics, replies that they're technically 86 years old, but with the hibernation, they look like they haven't aged since then. Max approaches Her Excellency to properly introduce himself. However, Her Excellency's guards mistake it for aggression and tackle him down to defend her. She asks her soldiers to let him go. Her Excellency discloses that it wasn't the women's fault, but rather the professor. The man had invented M-bomb, a chemical that was meant to temporarily paralyze male genes, but erase them instead. Max offers him and Albert as potential reproducers for the restoration of mankind. However, the women aren't interested. Her Excellency gestures to the tree where the 2 men had taken apples. She refers to it as sacred and narrates the story of Adam and Eve, where womankind lost their paradise forever. Looking back at the tree, Her Excellency finally notices the apples are missing. In anger and despair, she commands that the men be taken away and kept in their confinement. Max feels emasculated after being beaten up by women. Albert tries to raise his spirits, insisting that they have to leave since they must escape. He asserts that there must be a different and better world out there. Bothered by the feelings that arose after getting kissed by Max, Dr. Blonde visits the oldest elder they have. She trades a jar of strawberry jam to ask about the past and what was the role of men before. Dr. Blonde mentions that there's something about the two men that she finds fascinating. The elder inquires if she is in love with one of them. She asks what they plan to do, and Dr. Blonde admits that they've requested naturalization for the two, which means they'll undergo a sex reassignment surgery. The elder cries foul and tells her that it's worse than death for them, and that having men is the last chance for everything to go back to normal. Max and Albert are caught spying on a class where the women are being brainwashed about how men used to torture women before. This time, Dr. Blonde asks them to fill up a form that will allow the women to go through with the naturalization. They both refuse, with Albert stating that any kind of negotiations will have to wait until they're granted freedom. As Dr. Blonde and the others leave, the ceiling above the room opens, a huge assembly of women before them, watching them. They are to determine the two men's fate. They face a humiliating trial, with the women from Genetics blaming men for oppression, virtually all evil and vices, and praising the new society. The women debate if they'll have the men naturalized or exterminated. Archeo wants them to go through the surgery, while Genetics pushes for extermination, as well as requesting a chance to conduct interesting biomedical experiments on them. As the voting begins, Max and Albert try to escape again. This time they tongue massage the women and stun them with male hormones. Back at the assembly, Archeo wins by one vote with their suggestion to naturalize the men. However, they've already escaped. The men wander around the building and find themselves going deeper underground. They come across a mine shaft where they discover a boot lying on the floor with a bottle of alcohol and a sheet of newspaper from 1993 with stories about the beginning of the war. The security team catches up to them. Before they're caught, they find a waste chute and escape through it. They come across a group of anarchists who refuse to be part of the regime since they find it oppressive. They're playing loud music, having fun, and even engaging in intimate relations with each other. The group catches Max and Albert, thinking they're government spies. The pursuing security team finds them and attacks. In the chaos, the men avoid capture again. The two split up, but find each other again at the elevator. This time, Dr. Blonde finds them. Max asks what Dr. Blonde was doing with them, and she says that since they wanted to see the outside, she was going to take them there. Max doesn't believe her smelly bullshit, but Albert begs for him to trust her. She leads them to an area where the men can see the outside through a periscope. She informs them that the women have been living underground since the topside is still dark and barren, with no chance of recovery. Max asks if there's any way for them to still go outside, but Dr. Blonde tells him that their system is detecting 300 units of radiation, which is a side effect of the M-bomb and the reason why they decided to go underground. Max and Albert insist that they need to leave and would rather risk dying outside than living like a mole with the women. Dr. Blonde tells them that they'll get used to it, but they refuse. Disappointed, she tells them that she's a loyal state official. She alerts the security team of their whereabouts, and the men are captured again, with Max shouting that he'll never forgive Dr. Blonde. Emma and the brunette congratulate Dr. Blonde and inform her that she's earned a promotion because of her idea. The brunette then announces that Dr. Blonde has to hand over the data she has on the two, since Genetics will be taking over her work, as the men are now considered dangerous after they attempt to escape. They condescendingly promise that she'll have access to the conclusion of their tests. Dr. Blonde argues that they can't, since she's working on a dissertation on them, but Emma mockingly tells her that they'll need it too. Dr. Blonde throws away the pin she received for her promotion, upset that she won't be able to finish her work herself. While being examined, Albert exclaims that he'd rather be dead than changed into a woman. Their organs will be taken and given to older women, while the rest of their bodies will be synthesized for nutritional substances, since there's a lack of protein sources for them nowadays. Max and Albert are separated, with Albert undergoing the surgery first with the chief surgeon, who is the child Max had abandoned before hibernation. She expresses anger and resentment, believing that Max had left them for money. She also despises men and reiterates that there are no fathers now and will never come back. Dr. Blonde sneaks into the operating room and sabotages the surgery to help the men escape as revenge for Genetics taking the men and her research. They escape through the elevator, where Albert passes out due to the anesthetic given to him. He wakes up in 1994, with the professor announcing that the experiment worked even better than expected. Albert tells him that he wouldn't believe the dream he had, and shares that it was a world without men. Max speaks up to share that he had the same dream. Albert asks what it means to have the same dream. The professor states that it's fascinating but impossible. After declaring that it's only a dream, he wakes up back in the lift with Max and Dr. Blonde. She leads them back to the periscope room, where Dr. Blonde threatens the guards and orders them to take off their protective suits, and for the men to change into them. Trying to get to the surface, Dr. Blonde asks why the system isn't working, and the guard reveals that there's a password required that only Her Excellency knows. Losing hope, Max curses, which activates the capsule to the surprise of all. At the last minute, Dr. Blonde decides to join them and changes into a protective suit. While exploring topside, Max bumps against a barrier and is unable to go further. He takes a knife and cuts the fabric of the barrier, revealing a dazzling light. They all go through the hole and find themselves on a beach. It seems the women are being deceived, since the periscope area is surrounded by a structure, with a barren landscape painted on the inside of the canvas. They explore their surroundings and eventually reach a forest, but realize that the suits are running out of oxygen. While looking around, Max shouts in excitement while he removes his suit. He points at a stork and claims that if it can survive, so can they. As they continue, they come across a cozy house full of fresh food. They decide to have a meal in the garden, but Emma finds them. She demands them to surrender, but passes out when her suit loses oxygen. Albert runs to help her and carries her inside the house. When Emma comes to, she argues with Albert and demands she be taken back to base. As they're struggling, they accidentally turn on the TV and see an official government broadcast. Dr. Blonde and Emma are reported dead. There's also an interview with a fake Max and Albert, who claim to have been successfully naturalized and are feeling grateful. While resting in the living room, Max and Albert hear the sound of an arriving elevator and hide. It's Her Excellency who steps out. It turns out the house is hers. She notices the glasses the two used. When she opens the wardrobe, she finds Max hiding inside. She tries to run away, but is easily caught and overpowered by the two men. They find that Her Excellency is actually a man in disguise. Her Excellency confesses that he was only 4 years old when the war ended and the League of Women took over. The few boys who had survived were naturalized. His mom had hidden him away, which ensured his safety. He grew up hiding as a girl and decided to join the League, where he ended up being the leader. Albert points out that there are still thousands of women underground who don't know that there's no radiation anymore. Her Excellency explains that the radiation wasn't as strong as anticipated, but it was hard to change what the women had gotten used to. The two ask why he never tried to restore the old order, and Her Excellency confesses that he's scared of women. As a compromise, the two decide not to reveal his true identity if he allows them to live in his home with Dr. Blonde and Emma. Later, Max and Albert return underground, disguised as laboratory workers. They add male specimens to the flasks in the incubation center, claiming that once a legion of boys is born, none will be able to stop them. The movie ends in a flash forward, where a nurse wraps newborns in blankets and gasps in fear when she sees one male baby. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.